Madam Speaker. I thank you all for coming to attend this debate today. The proposition of policy is this House believes that federal funding for stem cell research should be discontinued. We have defined discontinue as stop. We have defined federal funding as money from taxpayers. We have defined embryonic stem cell as an end specialized cells from a human embryo. We have defined this kind of research as diverting the cells of an embryo from one purpose to another. And finally, we hope that the evidence my partner and I present will be clear enough to convince the House that there are more advantages to this proposition than disadvantages. Before we get into our debatable grounds, it is important to go over a few key concepts about the science of our debate. Most cells in the human body can only make copies of themselves identically. However, there are some cells called stem cells that can do more. The most powerful type of stem cell can produce any type of cell in the entire human body. Using these cells, scientists have great hope of finding solutions to injuries, illnesses, and diseases that were once thought to be totally incurable. Now, everyone in this room was once an embryo. It is the first stage of the human life cycle. And in our beginnings, we are all made up of stem cells. And with stem cells with the ability to grow and form into the fully formed adults we are today. In this debate, we will show how embryonic stem cells cause an unnecessary end to human life, and that there are other, better methods available to us that will provide us with a brighter future. Our first debatable ground is morality. Many people, in a 2014 article by Sarah Turzo, states that life begins at fertilization. The article then goes on to state 40 medical experts who give quotes from textbooks and other sources that agree with this fact. This is a scientific fact. It is not an opinion, and the controversy lies elsewhere. My opponents may say that this single-cell organism cannot possibly be considered with the same value as a fully grown human. However, I beg to differ. Everyone in this room is living proof that an embryo has the capability of becoming a fully formed infant, child, and adult. Whether we recognize it or not, embryos have the same potential for life as we do. The principal of my school, my homeschool group when I was in high school, is a man I very much admire. His name is Kevin Bryan, and together he and his wife are the adopted parents of a boy named Hayden. Keegan, you may turn on your visual aid. Hayden began his life in a petri dish. He was a leftover embryo from in vitro fertilization. Instead of throwing him away, his biological parents gave him to Nightlight Christian Adoptions. And with the help of this organization, Kevin and Linda became the parents of Hayden, and he is still an embryo. Now, Hayden is 8 years old. His favorite toys are Legos. His favorite movie is Despicable Me, and his favorite character is Kevin the Minion. He is the most precious thing his parents have in this world. And if his biological parents had decided to give him to stem cell research, this would have been a very different story. Stem cell research would have ended Hayden's life soon after it began. This human life never would have had the chance to grow into the boy he is now and the man he has every chance of becoming. My opponents may say this is a rare case, and they'd be right, but we're not talking about numbers here. Every human life has value. And it only takes one to change the world. In defense, my opponents may say that these cells are being sacrificed in order to save others, a kind of even trade that makes it worth the loss. However, this doesn't have to happen. There are other, better alternatives. And this brings us to my second debatable ground, alternative methods. Thank you, Keegan. Many people think that the only reasons that people have against embryonic stem cell research are moral ones. However, this is a far cry from the truth. According to a 2014 scholarly article by Ariel Zimmerman and several other experts from UCLA and other institutions, embryonic research has several drawbacks, including when they're transplanted into a highly injured area. They have a less than 3% survival rate, and they often form horrific tumors. A 2015 stem cell information page on the National Institutes of Health website says that patients who are injected with stem cell transplants have to take anti-rejection drugs for the rest of their lives. However, there are methods that bypass these drawbacks, and the most extraordinary one involves the use of Muse cells. Muse cells are very unique. They have the capability of the embryo. They can create any cell in the human body, but at the same time, they're stronger. They have a higher survival rate, and because of that, they don't form tumors. Perhaps the best part of this discovery is the place where Muse cells are found. Fat tissue. Yes, the thing that most Americans want to get rid of anyways holds the key to finding solutions for the most horrifying diseases and injuries. For my last debatable ground, future impact, I have only one thing to say. Any benefit we can gain from experimenting on human embryos can be matched and even surpassed by an alternative method. With the discovery of Muse cells, the future of stem cell research is closer and brighter than anyone could have imagined.
I'm sorry, time's up and I forgot to give you the 1 minute. I apologize.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Makayla, for our
member of government. And our prophecy is that we believe that federal funding for embryonic stem cell research should be discontinued. And the words of one of the three debatable grounds are morality, alternative methods, and future impacts. The words that she mentioned, discontinue means to stop. Federal funding is taxpayer money. Embryonic stem cell research. Embryonic means unspecialized cells derived from a human embryo. And research means diverting the cells from an embryo from one purpose to another. Okay, so far what's going on, the Prime Minister, she mentioned how stem cells are really powerful. She also mentioned how we're all made up of stem cells. She also mentioned how we are living proof of embryo because we have the potential to be someone in life. And she put out a picture of the baby the boy who was adopted, and we're living proof that we could be someone in life, you know. And she mentioned how every human has value. Okay, the leader of opposition, she mentioned how it's an opinion that embryonic stem cells are not human, but I have an article that proves that we are human. According to the article, The Ethics of Embryonic Stem Cell Research, founded in 2015, she says that he argues, when you look at an embryo at a 5-day-old, that's exactly how an embryo is going to look when he's 5 days old too. And that's what she mentions. She also mentioned how, the article also mentions how she argues that morality, relevant consideration we shouldn't be based on appearance, you know, but just because he's not fully mature as 9 months, that shouldn't matter, you know, that he still has a capacity to be someone in life, you know. And also the leader of opposition, she also mentioned how eggs are now human. She also mentioned how eggs are not human, but we're not talking about eggs, we're talking about like eggs who are already fertilized. And she said how they're not the embryonic stem cell research, that they're Puritan, but there's an article here that says that embryonic stem cell research can cause tumors. According to the article, according to the National Institute of Health, it says that they're not prone, that they're 3% less to be that they're risky. She's mentioned that embryonic research are risky because they could cause tumors, and that which causes cancer too, something like that. Okay, another thing she mentioned is Muse House have not enough research, and we argued that if we were to stop this federal funding for embryonic, we could use it for research, and there has been research. According to the article, Adult Stem Cells, Real Hope for the Future, it talks about that they did a research on a patient, on a Spanish, and that he was suffering, one patient suffered a nerve impairment, facial bone fracture, vessels, muscle, and nerve had grown. So the doctor who designed the Muse stem cell, he treated him with that, and the outcomes were that after this treatment with stem cells were surpassed in all inspections, and that treatment resulted in complete healing. So he had a problem, and when he put the Muse cell on him, he was able to get better. Okay, now I want to talk about morality. So we believe that embryos are human lives with potential. Like look at us. We're here. We were now destroyed. And we believe that human beings in the embryonic, fetal, and infant stages have real capacities for mental functions, even though they're not accessible yet. So according to the article, The Ethics of Embryonic Stem Cell Research, she argues that morality, relevant consideration shouldn't be the appearance, but rather the fact since the beginning the embryo possesses the epigenic primordial. Okay, and also according to the article, The Ethical Questions of Embryonic Stem Cell Research by Rebecca, published in April 2013, she argues that life begins at conception, and that moment the sperm fertilizes an egg is consequently the destruction of a week-old embryo, and is the destruction of a life. Just because an embryo at 1 week is not physically mature as 9 months doesn't mean that he doesn't have the rights. Can you please show me the picture? This is a picture of an embryo stem cell research, and this proves that there you see a tooth and fat and hair, and this is from Dr. Michael Morris and from the University of Sydney, and this is what happens when when they're not normal, they're like this. You can see that they cause like tumors, and you see like parts of an embryo. So they were embryos at first, they have the capacity. Thank you, Keegan. Okay, I want to talk about alternative methods. I want to talk about the Muse cells, because these cells Muse stands for multi-lineage stress enduring cells, which they're not, like my partner said, they don't cause tumors, so this won't happen when they put it into a human. They reside in mesenchymal tissues like bone marrow, like fat, and they're very small, and they live in many tissues, and they also pluripotent because they have the ability to give rise to all the various types of the body, and they repair tissue. And another alternative method is adult stem cells, because they have done some research about them, and they have done repair. According to the article, Scholarly Journal, published in 2014 by Ariel, it talks about that from 1994 to 2014, there have been 354 clinical trials for cancer, diabetes, and multiple sclerosis, bone, cartilage disease, brain disease, heart disease, and lung disease, and they have cured these injuries, And for the future impact, if we were to stop giving research to the embryonic stem cells, then we could help these cells become better and help cure more diseases. And Muse cells have a great impact because they help cure many diseases. And it's interesting because Muse cells have discovered.
Okay, sorry. It's really good at kept going. But I would like to ask what proof that you have that shows that these Muse cells have the exact same capabilities as embryonic cells, and the ability and their proven ability to turn into cells that are useful to cure degenerative, uncurable diseases.
Okay, well, according to scientific perspective, discovered stress-resistant cells, it talks about how Muse cells are the UCLA discovered Muse cells and were able to survive severe stress. They may even be activated upon it. And they also talked about how it's right here, the treatment for numerous diseases, including heart disease and stroke. So they have proved it according to the UCLA.
According to the UCLA, how much research has been done on this?
They started since June 5th.
Because
I'm gonna have to stop it there.
Okay.
So, hi, I'm Vanessa. Thank you all for being here. Just to recap what has happened, we had our Prime Minister open, stating opinions from morality. Is the embryo potential life? Is it not? Does life begin at fertilization? The potential of an embryo. She also discussed the alternative methods such as adult stem cells. She also discussed future impact and also other alternative methods for new cells. Then we heard from my partner, Amira, and she made a case on how life does not begin at fertilization and stated clear statistics about how there are many diseases that people are dying from and they can be saved, they can continue their life because they are living. Then she also made a great case about the eye study that was done at a university and how people actually got great results and actually got better using stem cell research. And then she ended with a great thing that really stuck with me was that law does not consider embryos a human life. And that is just very to the point. It's not a human life, it's a cluster of cells. It's a petri dish versus someone who's suffering, is the way I see it, is my opinion. Then we went on to Member of Government by Marissa, and she stated that we are human, whether we are a cell, whether we are living, we are born, we are all human. Then she went on to the risk for tumors and cancers of potential risk with using stem cell research. Continued on with potential life, the potential capacity of an organism and life beginning at conception and giving rights to an embryo versus someone who's suffering. And again, alternative methods with adult stem cell research and new cells. So, I'm first going to discuss morality, and just because it's such a heavy topic on really how much rights do we want to give an embryo, how much rights do we want to give an embryo versus someone who's suffering from Parkinson's disease or cerebral palsy. According to PhD Brian Clowes, author of Confused About Stem Cell Research, stem cells are harvested from human embryos that are typically between 3 and 6 days old. That is a very, it's the very, very beginning stages of an embryo. It is a cluster of cells. It's just the beginning, and there's no potential life, especially if you're weighing against someone who's clearly suffering. So I think that alone stands that it's done at such an early age, and it's very similar to the controversy of abortion. How early is potential life? Next on morality, according to Deborah White, author of Pros and Cons of Embryonic Stem Cell Research, at every step of the embryonic stem cell therapy process, decisions are made by scientists, researchers, medical professionals, and women who donate eggs. Decisions that are fraught with serious ethical and moral implications. Basically, this research it's backed by professionals. It's backed by people who are openly willing to donate their eggs for stem cell research. It shows that there's trust in these scientists, and that it's not really, it's not like, how do you say it? Basically, it's backed up by professionals, so to speak, and you have people contributing towards the cause, whether people want to continue funding it or not. And then according to Vanderbilt University, an article explained those in support of embryonic stem cell research claim that the week-old blastocysts, from which embryonic stem cells are derived, are merely a cluster of cells and thus do not constitute as a human being. Because these cells are not human, the embryo should not be afforded the same human rights as are guaranteed to other more advanced stages of cell growth. My partner Mira mentioned this earlier, like she said, that these are just a cluster of cells. There's no potential there. You have, like I said before, you have a human being who's suffering, whether it be cerebral palsy, honestly, many disabilities and heart diseases. You're weighing stem cells, you're weighing cells, and then you're weighing technology that we have to actually help someone. And then I will go on to alternative methods. According to Ian Mergen, transplant waiting lists are enormous and many people die awaiting transplants. Stem cells offer a viable source of replacement cells to treat diseases and can potentially reduce the morbidity and mortality for those awaiting transplants. Some of the areas that stem cells can benefit include Parkinson's disease, type 1 diabetes, arthritis, burn victims, and cardiovascular disease. This is a great point for how it can be used as such a great way to help people who have been on the waiting list for years. I did some research, and you could be on there for a long time. People do end up dying because the list just goes on and on and on. So if we continue to fund it, we can cut out that waiting period. We can bypass it, and we can help people faster. So as far as future impact, according to OccupyTheory.org, stem cell research can also potentially, in the future, help trade medical problems like birth defects, Parkinson's disease, replace or repair damaged organs, Alzheimer's disease, and spinal cord injuries. With the proper treatment of these diseased individuals, they will get significant social benefits and society will have gains. This is because the diseases of the impact on other lives of the individuals will impact society. So a good example of that is the families who care for the people who are ill. It's a lot of work. It's effort. So if we continue funding this, then we could impact their lives less. We could save them less caretaking because they could be treated immediately. Yes.
You said that the embryos are donated, and then that even though they're taken apart and their potential for life is ended, they are saving others. However, I mentioned new cells who do not have to take away life in order to give it, and that are stronger and altogether better. What do you have to say?
Let's see. As far as new cells, I would say that they are limited with what they can provide. They may not be costing lives, but they are limited with how they could help people.
Firstly, they are called mu cells, M-U-S-E.
Oh, okay.
And they were discovered maybe 2 years ago.
Okay.
And they're already showing more potential than embryonic stem cells. They're pluripotent. They can create any cell in the human body, just like embryos. However, they do not have the drawbacks of tumors or the low survival rate.
I'm going to have to stop it there. Arguments supporting the government's case.
As my opponents mentioned, embryos, they cannot grow into life when they're being researched on. And I totally agree. When something is being pulled apart and placed in places it's not supposed to be, yes, it cannot grow into life. That's not because it had no potential or no capability to if we had left it on its own. It is not growing to human because we're not letting it. The teratoma you saw, the picture of those cells, that formation, it was a tumor that was caused when embryonic stem cells were transplanted into an organism. They did not differentiate right, they did not grow into the cells that scientists expected them to. Now think about it. It was a human embryo. What would it have grown to? What you were seeing, the teeth, the fat, the hair, those were little bits of the human that could have been. The simple fact is that the boy I showed you earlier, Hayden Bryant, is alive. and he is alive because his biological parents chose to let him live. They gave him up for adoption. They could have given him to embryonic stem cell research. And you know what? He would not be alive. Fact. My opponents mentioned that the law does not consider embryos human life. Not too long ago in our country's history, there was a very large group of people who were not considered human life. But from that group of people came champions, such as Martin Luther King Jr., Harriet Tubman, and Frederick Douglass. Just because society and law did not consider them human life, did not stop them from having the potential, the capability, and the intention to change the world. And I'm proud to say that they succeeded. My opponents mentioned that embryonic stem cells have a lot of potential. They have a lot of promise, and they've been shown to be successful. However, the new cells, NESCR cells, that were discovered just 2 years ago, just little research has been done on them. But already, scientists are certain that they show more promise and less drawbacks than embryonic stem cell research. My source was questioned. However, if 3 professors from UCLA who posted information on a website that was for the U.S. Library of Medicine and the Institutes of National Health, if those cannot be trusted, then I say that the sources of my opposition cannot be trusted either. Now I have a question for the House. Now that you know that your tax dollars are being spent to fund research that is not only immoral, but is also not as safe, not as effective, and not as promising as alternative methods, are you satisfied with the status quo? Thank you.